Testing. Oh, good evening, everybody. Hi, my name is Jenny Wingrovius. I'm the president here at the Melrose Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm so happy to see all of you. So just a couple quick things before we begin. We have 3 emergency exits. If you will look to your left, my left, your right, you will see an exit sign here, and then one on the other side. Please use the exits. Be aware that this exit, actually the door is all the way down a very long hallway. So hopefully we won't need that. There are 3 bathrooms available. We have 2 along the hallway here, and then in this room next door to us, kind of tucked in the back corner, there is a 3rd restroom. I do just want to say a quick little bit about MUUC. We do not have one shared belief about the definition and nature of God and spirituality, but we agree on the need for justice and ethics in our world. Our members include practicing and former Christians, Jews, Buddhists, pagans, atheists, and agnostics. And we are a community that gathers together to explore how to enrich the human experience through kindness, justice, right relationships, and love. So you can visit us on Sunday mornings at 10:30. We are here in person or online. And we do have programs available for all ages, so kids, adults, everybody. So thank you so much for coming tonight, and I am going to turn the floor over to Alistair.
Thank you, Jenny. Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. My name is Alistair Mook, and this is Opening Doors. This project actually started here in this church a year and change ago through some funding from the anti-racist team here at the church. And we have now grown into our own organization. We've taken off on our own. And having conversations about race, having conversations about justice is what we do at the Opening Doors project. Our sponsors tonight who made this show possible are the Melrose Cooperative Bank, the Melrose Messina Fund, an arts fund here in town, and the Club Passim Iguana Music Fund. Club Passim is a place where Pamela and I have spent a lot of time over the years, so it was extra special to get their help. Thank you to the Melrose Human Rights Commission, the Mayor's Office, and a new group, which I hope you guys know about, called Melrose Creative Alliance, which has started over this past year. It's a group that is promoting arts in Melrose and really helping to turn this community into an arts community. And they're doing it in a thoughtful way with a real focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So please join, go look for their mailing list, Creative Arts Alliance, and join. And they have now a newsletter of everything that's happening in town. So when people say, I didn't know it was happening, now you know it's happening. All right? And thanks so much to the Melrose UU Church. Reverend Suzanne Intriligator couldn't be here tonight, but we're thinking about her. Thank you to Jenny Wingrovius, the board president here, and to Josh Shortledge and everybody at the anti-racist team. Thanks to John Raymond and Ann Easterbooks for volunteering tonight. And Stacy Babb, who's hiding in the back, which is her tendency, is kind of the engine behind this organization. So thank you to Stacy for making Opening Doors happen. You can learn more about our project at openingdoorsproject.net. You can donate there, which we certainly appreciate because it helps us bring programs like this. So I'm really, really excited to present a very good friend of mine, an old friend of mine. We met about a quarter of a century ago here in this town. We were both 4 years old at the time. Her name's Pamela Means. I won't go through her bio. If you checked out our site, you've seen all of the rave reviews, but I'll tell you that Ani DeFranco is a fan. The New York Times is a fan. I'm a fan, and you will be a fan when you see her tonight. So she's going to perform for you for about 45 minutes. Then we're gonna move stuff around a little bit. She and I are gonna sit down and have a conversation on stage. We have this microphone. We're gonna pass it around and let you guys be part of that conversation too. Does that sound all right? All right, please welcome Pamela Means.
Thank you so much. My country, 'tis of thee. What's the matter with you? Handing out liberty for the privileged few. No justice for the rest of us. You've been crooked and cruel. Time to tear it all down and build something new. Time to tear it all down and build something true. We've been saying it for years, now the video shows it. Reason for rage and tears and fears, now everybody knows it. No more thoughts and prayers, rhetoric is through. Truth and reconciliation, reparations are due. My country, 'tis of thee, let me holler at you. Plenty opportunity for the privileged few. Roadblock for black, brown, poor. You've been callous and cruel. Time to tear it all down and build something new. Time to tear it all down and build something true. We've been saying it for years, now the video shows it. Reason for rage and tears and fears, now everybody knows it. No more thoughts and prayers, rhetoric is through. Truth and reconciliation, reparations are due. My country, 'tis of thee, let me holler at you. Plenty opportunity for the privileged few. Roadblock for black, brown, poor. You've been callous and cruel. Time to tear it all down and build something new. Time to tear it all down and build something true. Time to tear it all down and build something new. Ooh. Time to tear it all down and build something true. Thank you very much. This is a tune I co-wrote with James Madison, the 4th president of the United States. He wrote the chorus in the late 1700s, Federalist Paper number 51, and tag team. We got it. The chorus are the actual words of James Madison, and they've troubled me ever since I first read them. I'm just explaining it. founding fathers, free spirit men. Some grew hemp on the plantations. All had slaves, they didn't free them. All had slaves, and some raped them. Jimmy James Madison didn't give two flips about anyone. Polk's manifest destiny didn't work out for the Cherokee. The purpose of the government is to protect the minority of the opulent from the majority. Two-party systems seem like one. Gold at the top and the rest on rickety-rackety runs. We got the money, we got the guns, we got greed and idiocy, and embarrassment to everyone with any sense of decency. The purpose of the government is to protect the minority of the opulent from the majority. The purpose of the government is to protect the minority of the opulent from the majority. Pride, perverse police populations, prisons populate, profits, predictions of politicians salivate. Ellsberg, Manning, Snowden, Davis, heroes and dissidents. We all could use a daily dose of civil disobedience. We all could use a daily dose of civil disobedience. The purpose of the government is to protect the minority of the opulent from the majority. The purpose of the government is to protect the minority of the opulent from the majority. So I'm doing right now an abbreviated version of a show that I've put together called Pamela Presents the Power of the Protest song. And I applied for some Mass Cultural Council grants last year, and I won a bunch of gigs to do this. I had a gig in Franklin, Mass. last summer. You all know Franklin. And it was one of only 5 gigs that I had in 2021, which was 3 more than I had in 2020. And the organizer of this festival told me about the Mass Cultural Council grants, and that the state has this big organization, the Mass Cultural Council, and that any town in Massachusetts can have its own local council. At the moment, there are 329 local councils. And I would have cut and pasted my application 329 times, but you had to have conversations with people in advance and find a venue who would commit to hosting your show. So I initially applied to 25, but Worcester in the fine print said you had to live there. And so I had to withdraw that, and I applied to 24 towns, and I got 22 gigs. And thank you. grateful for that. And I was also told that if I could make my idea educational, it could increase my chances. So Power of the Protest song is a chance for me to still be myself and sing all of my political songs and learn and relearn other songs that have been important to me and our country. And so that's that. So here we go. I like to imagine hearing this song being sung, wafting through a Harvard Square when this performer was busking a long time ago. Don't you know they're talking about a revolution? Sounds like a whisper. Don't you know they're talking about a revolution? Sounds like a whisper. Poor people gonna rise up and take their share. Poor people gonna rise up and get what's theirs. Don't you know they're talking about a revolution? Sounds like a whisper. Don't you know they're talking about a revolution? Sounds like a whisper. Standing in the welfare lines, crying at the doorsteps of those armies of salvation, wasting time in the unemployment lines, sitting around waiting for a promotion. Don't you know they're talking about a revolution? Sounds like a whisper. Poor people gonna rise up, get their share. Poor people gonna rise up, take what's theirs. But you know you better run, 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 run. I said you better run, 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 run. 'Cause finally the tables are starting to turn. Talk about a revolution. Tables are starting to turn. Talk about a revolution. Poor people gonna rise up, take their share. Poor people gonna rise up, get what's theirs. Don't you know they're talking about a revolution? Sounds like a whisper. Don't you know they're talking about a revolution? Sounds like a whisper. Don't you know they're talking about a revolution? Sounds like a whisper. Thank you to everyone here at the UU for putting this all together, and thank you, Alistair, for bringing me to town. Thank you all for being here. Bill's back there. He doesn't want anyone to know. Any fans of Bruce Cockburn? Oh, that's a lot. All right. He's a tremendous songwriter from Canada. Probably has 30 albums out, and many of them are acoustic and a lot of political songs. And so here's one of them. How you doing so far? All right. Okay. Here comes the helicopter. Second time today. Everybody scatters and hopes it goes away. How many kids they've murdered, only God can say. If I had a rocket launcher, if I had a rocket launcher, if I had a rocket launcher, I'd make somebody pay. I don't believe in guarded borders, and I don't believe in hate. I don't believe in generals or their stinking torture states. When I talk to the survivors, things too sickening to relate. If I had a rocket launcher, if I had a rocket launcher, if I had a rocket launcher, I would retaliate. To raise up every voice, at least I've got to try. Every time I think about it, what arises to my eyes? The situation desperate, echoes of victims' cries. If I had a rocket launcher, if I had a rocket launcher, if I had a rocket launcher, some son of a bitch would die. Sometimes I say that my songs begin in fetal position. because it's most accurate. And on the days when, you know, our country, our world is grieving extra, I feel very fortunate to have had a guitar most of my life to process all the feels. And it's better than punching walls. This song was written on the day of the Uvalde shooting in Texas, and in a puddle of despair, I picked this up. It sort of turns into a sing-along at the end, which is a pretty heavy lift for a native Wisconsinite. This is my impression of a Midwesterner leading a sing-along. So when I do that at the end, that's your cue. Another white boy with his hands on the trigger, along with legislators who let the loopholes linger. Law of the land loves white supremacy, so none of us are safe, no one is free. I don't think I'll live long enough to see this angry country discover unity, but as long as I got breath in my lungs, I will fight for justice, I will sing for love. Luther King worked to make the world a better place. He said, only love can drive out the hate. Only light can drive out the dark. So hatred shot him down in a Memphis parking lot. I don't think I'll live long enough to see this angry country discover unity. But as long as I got breath in my lungs, I will fight for justice, I will sing for love. Fight for justice, I will sing for love. I will fight for justice, I will sing for love. Nothing more important than stopping fascism, 'cause fascism will stop us all. The immortal words of Fred Hampton. Black Panther Party sounding the call. Power to the people, free breakfast for the children. At 21, a freedom fighter, so Chicago police killed him. I don't think I'll live long enough to see this angry country discover unity. But as long as I got breath in my lungs, I will fight for justice, I will sing for love. Fight for justice, I will sing for love. I will fight for justice, I will sing for love. Fight for justice, I will sing for love. I will fight for justice, I will sing for love. 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 I will fight for justice, I will sing for love. You know those, you like when you go to fancy places and the bathroom has like a lobby and then the toilets and there's always like fancy women in the mirror there? I go in and I'm like this. So one of the protest songs that I know the most about is Strange Fruit, because I resisted singing it for a very long time. In my mind, Billie Holiday had performed the definitive version, and it was untouchable, so to speak. And but I've learned that's not the case. Dozens and dozens of performers have sung Strange Fruit through the years. And Billie Holiday was the first. And if you can imagine, she started singing it when she was 23. And that would be in 1939. And there was still active lynchings. And in fact, her father, she said she always thought of Pop when she sang the song because her father was a musician who toured a lot, and he had lung issues. And he was on the road, and hospital after hospital refused to help him, and he died of his lung issues, and that's a form of lynching. And so Strange Fruit has a Massachusetts connection. And also what helped me find my courage to sing it was learning that dozens of people had sung it, but also in the 40s-ish, in New York City, musicians had to have a cabaret license to perform wherever alcohol was served. And many musicians lost their cabaret licenses and their livelihoods because they refused to stop singing Strange Fruit, including Billie Holiday and Josh White and the head of the FBI, Harry Anslinger, went to Billie Holiday's hospital bedside to warn her to stop singing the song. And she refused, and they made her life, they terrorized her, and probably all led to her early death at the age of 44. That harassment plus singing the song every night. And when she would sing the song, she would have all the wait staff stop service, and she'd have just one spotlight on her face. So in silence and starkness, she would sing Strange Fruit and then leave and never return to the stage. And I thought it was to have an audience sit with the feelings that this song brings up. And I think that's true, but I think she couldn't go back. The song, almost 100 years later, is still a devastating piece, and it's still relevant, and so I'm still singing it. The Massachusetts connection is that it was written by Abel Meeropol, a Jewish school teacher who lived in the Bronx. And he wrote it first as a poem under the pen name Lewis Allen, which are the first names of the only two children he and his wife Anne had, and those two children died of disease in childhood. And Abel and Anne were also friends with Julius and Ethel Rosenberg. And when they were executed in 1953, the Meeropols adopted the two orphaned sons of the Rosenbergs, Michael and Robert. And Michael and Robert grew up to form the Rosenberg Fund for Children, which is headquartered in East Hampton, Mass. And it fights and advocates for political activists who've been persecuted. It supports them and their families. And so... Southern trees bear a strange fruit, blood on the leaves and blood at the root. Blackbuddies swinging, the southern breeze, strange fruit hanging from the poplar trees. Pastoral scene of the gallant South, the bulging eyes and the twisted mouth, scent of magnolias, sweet and fresh, the sudden smell of burning flesh. Here is a fruit for the crows to pluck, the rain to gather, the wind to suck, sun to ride, tree to dry. Here is a strange and bitter cry. Do a couple more for you. This one is in the category of I'm glad that the songwriter wrote it. This is a tune by Jason Isbell. And, I think we all have to, do what we can do right where we are and talk to whom we can speak to. And so Jason Isbell is out there singing this tune to his predominantly white audience. And I'm glad for it. It's called White Man's World. I'm a white man living in a white man's world. Under our roof is a baby girl. Thought this world would be hers one day, but her mama knew better. I'm a white man living in a white man's town. Wanna take a shot of cocaine and burn it down. Mama wants to change that Nashville sound, but they're never gonna let her. There's no such thing as someone else's war. Your creature comforts aren't the only thing worth fighting for. I'm still breathing, it's not too late. We're all carrying one big burden, sharing one fate. I'm a white man living on a white man's street. Got the bones of the red man under my feet. The highway runs through the burial ground, past the oceans of cotton. I'm a white man looking in a black man's eyes. Wish I'd never been one of the guys who pretended not to hear another white man's joke. Old times ain't forgotten. There's no such thing as someone else's war. Your creature comforts aren't the only thing worth fighting for. I'm still breathing, it's not too late. We're all carrying one big burden, sharing one fate. living in a white man's nation. I think the man upstairs must have took a vacation. I still have faith, but I don't know why. Maybe it's the fire in my little girl's eyes. Maybe it's the fire in my little girl's eyes. Do you one more, and then we're going to talk about some stuff. I have some CDs out there, and for the first time, 2 different T-shirts, 2 designs of the same T-shirt. My self-portrait is on there, and there's stickers out there too. Stickers are free. So thank you again. Thank you, Alistair. Thank you, Stacy. Bill. Hands up, don't shoot. I'm tough and not bulletproof. Gonna love out loud, not afraid. Gonna march down Main in the Pride Parade. No closets, no shame. Yes, love, no hate. Hands up, don't shoot. We're tough, not bulletproof. It's not the guns, it's the trigger. It's the bullet in the chamber sent to kill a stranger by a hateful, deranged figure. It's not the guns, it's the trigger. It's the bullet in the chamber sent to kill in anger by a hateful, deranged figure. Hands up, don't shoot. We're tough, not bulletproof. don't shoot. We're tough, not bulletproof. Ho, hey, NRA, how many souls did you kill today? Ho, hey, NRA, how many deaths you facilitate? Ho, hey, NRA, how many kids did you kill today? Ho, hey, NRA, how many hearts did you break today? Thank you very much, Melrose.
We're gonna move some stuff, pull some tape up, and sit down and talk a little bit. What'd you guys think of that? Hey, everybody. The last time we did this in this church, the first live concert we did was with Kemp Harris. Was anyone at that show? And I got COVID that day, so I had to ask questions from up there. This is so much nicer. How you doing? Oh, good. The audience participation part is later. This is Pamela's 4th show today. We did 3 shows at a school this morning, which was a brand new experience for you.
Having an out-of-body experience right now. I was up at 5 a.m. and
She said, "What time do we start?" She's coming from Northampton or East Hampton, and we were in Weston. I said, we start at 9 to be there at 8:15. She said, "In the morning?"
there's a lot of cars out at that time.
So, friend, I'll let you catch your breath a little bit. But the first thing I wanted to ask you was what that experience this morning was like, because that was brand new for you, playing for kids in a school setting.
Yeah.
I know you haven't really had time to process, but what did you feel?
And actually, I was really, I usually panic when there's small children or adolescent boys, and, you know, I cross the street, and I was worried about being teased the way I was teased when I was a kid, and how my hair always was the main point of laughter and persecution. And so none of that happened, and it was really a wonderful, yeah.
There was a really interesting that happened. One of the things, this is a program that I've been doing with Reggie Harris for many years, and Reggie and I did the Opening Doors Festival here last summer. Reggie and I like to start our program with kids, whether little or old, by talking about what we have in common and what is different about us, and we'll draw the kids in. And race comes up quick. Reggie's dark and I'm light. But twice today in 2 different programs, kids said, "You're both white." And I could see you got thrown. I'm really curious what that felt like. You talked a little bit about it the second time with the kids.
Yeah, I said, well, you're half, right? I'm biracial. My mother is white, my father is black. And I said it was really interesting to be perceived as white because I do not perceive myself as white. I perceive myself as I am a person of color, especially when the police come around. And I said that too. And I don't think I'm done processing that part. You know, it hits on some really old stuff. And it's just fascinating to hear how someone sees you, especially when it seems to be the opposite that you see and even express yourself to be. Yeah.
It brought up, for me, it made me think, because this isn't something in our program that has come up. It's such a specific experience in America to be biracial. And it's, as every year goes past, it's more and more a common thing in our country. And you know, I'm white and white, but my mom, who's here, my mom and dad are here. My mom's Jewish, and at this time of rising anti-Semitism and persecution and violence, I carry this feeling of like I pass, right? And it brings all sorts of feelings with it. Like I don't want to, but I have what I have. So that's a different experience of it, but it's interesting to be in those in-between places and to navigate that. It's something I've talked with kids quite a lot about. It's something that immigrant kids navigate all the time, right? And even kids who are darker, whatever, that whole sort of code switching things. Like here we were today in a very affluent school, a private school in Weston, which to me is like a double whammy, right? Like affluent. They were wonderful. And the school is they have the luxury with wealth of being able to examine race, and they're doing that work. But all those kids of color who were there, I thought, and I think all the time about the code switching that has to happen when you come into a space like that, and then you go home to a different community. Did you ever experience that? You grew up in Wisconsin, and you were talking today that you went to Lutheran schools, which weren't so enlightened.
Yeah. I'm still untying knots from that Lutheran school. I went to Lutheran school 3rd through 8th grade and then 11th and 12th. And to be told as early as 3rd grade that gays go to hell before I even really knew, I'm queer, if you didn't guess that already. There's that planted a seed of self-loathing. And it's taken me years to undo that, and I think it's actually still in process. You can't say such terrorizing things to a child, and they're going to forget it? No, that buries deep into your psyche. So I have a lot of rage toward that church and the damage toward all organized religion and the damage that it has done. And that bevy of Christians was the first place and the only place where I was called the N-word until I was an adult. And I still haven't successfully written about that. I really want to write about that, and I want to out them. I want to drive by, like, paint billboards in front of that place. And I don't see why they would have changed anything. I didn't believe in dinosaurs until my 20s because I was taught the earth is 6,000 years old and the dinosaur footprints are fake because the devil put them there to fool us. And, but and I really believe that. I was like, whoa, Jesus, the dinosaurs are fake, the devil, whoa. And I think that two things. Having been in that position, I have insight into how evangelicals are immovable in their positions. And it's really going to be an uphill battle to loosen the grip of being misinformed and hanging on to hateful beliefs and divisions. And the other thing is, I think that were I not a lesbian, I would still be there. I would still believe in those things because I came to a point in my own life where I had to make the decision, am I going to be myself? Am I going to listen to the voice in me and follow my natural, authentic self? Or am I going to just follow these rules that hate me and have kicked me to the curb already? So I'm on the other side of a long process, but I don't think that process is finished.
I'm curious, we talked a little bit about this when you were on the online series. This series, Opening Doors, started during the pandemic as an online videos, and you can see all of those interviews if you're interested. And we talked some about this then. These kind of parallel or different tracks of facing both, right? Racism and race, and then gender orientation stuff. So I'm obviously on the outside looking in, but having a kid who's genderqueer, who identifies as gay, I try really hard not to be Pollyannish about it because I know that we live in a bubble. But when I look in this community and I see the world that Elm has grown up in versus the world that you grew up in, but even in the sort of liberal suburbs of New York where I grew up, where I didn't know anybody who was out all through high school, versus a town that has an active GSA in middle school, let alone in the high school. And GSA, for those who don't know, used to stand for Gay Straight Alliance, but now stands for Gender Sexuality A something. Alliance, okay. It's not easy, and every day there's microaggressions and there's bathroom stuff, and it's not easy. But the way this community has held my child is so different. But then I think about how we handle race, and I feel like the changes are small. Something happened with gender sexuality, and my instinct is that it's about intimacy. It's about, anybody can have a gay kid, but you don't end up with a black kid if you're white by mistake, right? And that proximity combined with whatever cultural forces have pushed that envelope in an incredibly constricted period of time, it feels like. In the 20 years since we've known each other. But race is something that we continue to struggle with so deeply. So that's my perception, but what's your perception? And you navigate a lot of white spaces like this, you navigate plenty of very straight spaces. Where are the distinctions for you?
I am usually protecting myself. You know, I see this country come close and dip its toe into having honest discussions about race. The most excited I was, that's a weird word, but the most hopeful I was the summer of 2020 after the murder of George Floyd. But I'm not right away, because I know how y'all are, like trendy and then it's all over, you know? And that is what has happened. You know, it lasted longer than I expected. I'm grateful for that. If some people stuck in there, probably a few more people put Black Lives Matter flags and signs on their yard, which I do very much appreciate. So if you have the ability to be supportive in that way, it really makes a difference, especially some of these zip codes. I don't want to be driving through a lot of these zip codes around, even in Massachusetts. And so even out front here with a rainbow flag, it is very, I feel more safe than I would. So if you have signs in your yard and you know, they make a difference. We need a lot more than signs in a yard, definitely. And I appreciate the work that you're doing. And I think it was also important for the kids that we spoke to today to see me, and you know, I outed myself, but also see Alistair speak, and to see a white person talk about these things intelligently, and one who cares. And I say that I need a lot more. I need a lot more. You know, I do play white spaces. I have mostly white audiences. I talk about it in therapy, you know, and I sometimes cry on the drive home because somebody said some dumb, fucked up shit, even if it's off the cuff. Like, are you half black? Oh, that explains the hair. Like, oh my, like, it's infuriating, and it's disappointing, and it's hurtful, and sometimes I don't know why I keep playing those rooms. You know, I also don't know why did I move to New England from Milwaukee. You know, being who I am, answer is I followed Peter Mulvey and I just copied everything that he did. So he could have moved to, you know, Oklahoma, and I'm glad he didn't, but then I'd be like in Tulsa talking some shit. But, you know, New York was really scary at the time. And I did move there later, and I appreciated just a diverse populace when you walked outside. But I've also found, you know, I've toured all over the country. I've been to other countries. And there is no single place where I can be all of the things that I am without hassle. In New England, I can be queer. I can be a woman, I can be a loudmouth, radical lefty. I can kind of be black, but not fully. And there's nowhere where I can be all of those things simultaneously in peace. And so I live here in New England because I can be most of those things. And I would like it to be more than that. And I always need more people of color in my world and in my life to, you know, just like anyone, any subgroup of people, when you can just look at someone and understand. You don't even have to have the conversation. Just be like, just give a look. We all need that, and I really need that. And I have to work to find it in these places. So it's way better than Milwaukee. It's way better than Wisconsin. I'm not going back to Wisconsin.
Oh, we got Peter Mulvey, among other things. I want to thank you for putting out your vulnerability and laying it out here in this space. This is my first time having this intimate of a conversation in front of a crowd, because I did it with Kemp from here, and I feel how different it is when we have the video conversation. It's close. And coming into this space with so many people and talking about this stuff that's so personal is exhausting, I imagine, and hard. But it's also a gift, because we don't have these conversations in these spaces very often, including at this church. As much as we want to, and as much as folks try, we're not real good at it because we don't have a lot of practice. Most of us don't have conversations about race, and when I say most of us, I mean most of us white folks. We talked about this with the kids today, but one of the things I've learned in sort of diving in a lot deeper in the last couple of years and working with peers of color and doing anti-racism work is how different the context is. One of the great privileges of whiteness is not needing to talk about race, and we rarely do. And folks of color in this country across the realm of color talk about race all the time because you can't ignore it. It's part of everyday life, and that means that we don't have a lot of practice. And one of the things I've learned is that, generally speaking, the most effective anti-racism work is work that happens between white people, among white people. And when you learn new things, the most useful you can be is turning around and talking with somebody else who hasn't learned it yet. And the least useful you can be is turning around going, how do you not know that when you just learned it a week ago? But this kind of conversation is rare and special. And I want to open it up, but I had one more thing, because we're meeting on a weekend that is meaningful in America, and the reason we were at these schools today is because of this weekend, Dr. King weekend. And I'll tell you, every year when Dr. King, this day comes around, I kind of tighten up, because it's so frickin' loaded, right? It's so loaded because of the way that King's message has been so deeply co-opted in this country, to the point where everybody of every theology and every political stripe quotes him every day. In the Congress this week, a U.S. congressman got up, and as he nominated for the first time ever a black man from the Republican Congress, which was show standing. There was no chance of this man having the position. This was political theater. He made a point of saying, we have for the first time ever, two black men nominated for Speaker of the House. And then went on to quote Dr. King. And those words should burn in his mouth, but they don't. As he says, we in the Republican Party strive to acknowledge people's character rather than the color of their skin, which is a great way of saying we don't see color. So when this day comes around, what I struggle with personally, and this is something I want your thoughts on, Pamela, if you're willing to share, is how do we honor King's real legacy, which was a legacy that was focused on two things primarily, as I understand it, and I could be wrong, but race and racial justice was his first prong, and the second one was wealth and poverty. But somehow, in many suburban white communities, it becomes a day about kindness, it becomes a day about being nice, and Dr. King wasn't nice. he was a radical. He was a radical who won approval and then lost it over and over again because he refused not to speak out. He refused not to speak out about class when white folks didn't want to hear it. He refused to not speak about the war when we got involved in Vietnam War, and that was the point where President Johnson jumped off. He was a radical thinker, and that legacy is lost. So when we have our Dr. King Day, what I struggle with is I want it to be inclusive. I want to acknowledge all of the other things, the other versions of diversity and equity and inclusion. I want it to, because I think ultimately, I hope that Dr. King's vision would have extended to other versions of inclusion. He was a man of his time, but if racial justice and wealth aren't at the center of the work, then it feels like we're losing his message and undermining it. What do you think? And how does a town like this stay focused and honor him? It's a big question.
I think we have to remember how active he was and how progressive, and that he was out there in the street. He was marching on a regular basis. He was talking to political leaders and pushing them on their voting and their decision making. And he didn't let up. And I think that we can take from that an intensity, and to push harder at all times and to not let up. And I think we've learned in this country that when people do go out in the street, change happens. Not always. It has to be consistent and meaningful, and there have been very few people were in the streets, it seems, in the 60s a lot. And I don't really see that anymore. Like, there was a couple months after George Floyd, and that was good, but I think that real shoulder to the wheel behavior and actually doing things.
Thanks. Well, we want to take some questions from you guys. Microphone is here, and we can bring it around if you raise your hand. If there's folks around who want to help Jenny, while she's doing that, and you are being brave in yourselves to ask those questions, I want to give a shout out to somebody who's here, who came all the way from Springfield tonight. Her name's Tanisha Arena. And Tanisha helps chair an organization called Arise for Social Justice in Springfield, which is the kind of local organization which is doing, in my mind, exactly the kind of work that honors King's legacy. It's working on racial justice and poverty issues. So when you go home tonight, look up Arise for Social Justice in Springfield. Do we have a question back there?
Yes, hi. First of all, I love your hair. You have fabulous hair. And you've brought such energy to the room after such an incredibly long day, of all those concerts. Could you speak to how you are such a badass guitar player, and who your mentors were, who your teachers were? Are you just innately gifted? You are an incredible musician. And that must have had a huge impact on you when you were a young woman in school. This couldn't have been an ember that didn't light up early in your life. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Thank you. I feel like I always played toy instruments and I always made up songs. And I feel like the decision I made was, I was also painfully shy, so shy. When I played my songs for my two best friends, the first time I made them turn their back to me. And so, and they liked it and I didn't believe them. And the only decision I made was, how could I deal with my shyness so that I could pursue my dream? And I did face it with private voice lessons. A friend gave me the phone number of a private voice teacher, and I was too scared for a whole year to call her. And then I finally did, and we had a lesson at 10:30, and I showed up at 10:30 p.m. with my little hat on. She's like, no, Pamela. Come back next week. But her name is Helen Cece, and she's in Milwaukee. And I was very fortunate to find her because she didn't talk about technical things. She didn't talk about singing from your diaphragm. She said to think about having the sound come from the floor up through your body and shooting out the top of your head. And if you sang a note wrong, it's because you didn't tell your voice what to do with it. And so she is wonderful, and that helped me. After lessons for a year with her, I finally played an open mic, and also realized that it was going to take a really long time. And guitar-wise, I lived in Milwaukee. I was very naive. I didn't know how to, I didn't know Peter Mulvey yet, so I didn't know how to start anything. And I stumbled into the conservatory. I ended up going to the Wisconsin Conservatory of Music, and I studied classical guitar and for 3 years, and that's the best guitar decision I've ever made. And in the middle of that 3 years, I began to study jazz because it sounded cool, but I didn't listen to jazz, and I was terrible, and I did really poorly. And then once I played an open mic, I quit everything else. I quit the conservatory because I knew my path. And sometime later, I saw a documentary about John Coltrane, and he would just play his scales all day long. And he'd go to the gig, and after the first intermission, he'd go in the bathroom and play his scales some more. He'd finish the gig, and then he'd go uptown to an all-night jam. And it just dawned on me how dedicated every jazz and classical musician is. You can get away with a lot in rock and pop. You don't have to know anything. You can make millions of dollars. And I dug out my old homework because I realized, I gotta practice. And I dug out my old jazz homework and just went through it on my own and started to teach myself. And I've been going from there. I practice more now than I ever did as a young person. And I also give lessons, and my motto as a teacher is to teach the way I wish I had been taught, which is to tell a student, you gotta do your scales because that's where the music is. And if you do your scales and your fundamentals, then you can be a badass and play your own guitar solos immediately. You don't have to wait forever until it dawns on you that that's what you have to do. And I'm grateful for the guitar.
Dorothy Travis, who asked that question, is the great piano teacher in this town, has taught our two kids and pushes them to practice their scales too. I'll say...
Well, here's the thing about scales. We all know Itzhak Perlman, the great violinist. If he takes on a student, the very first thing he says is, do you know your scales? And if they don't, and he also says that if he doesn't practice for 1 day, he notices. If he doesn't practice for 2 days, his wife notices.
Yeah, those guys put us to shame. I'll say, so we did meet, it's about 25 years ago when we probably came to Boston around the same time. I got here in 95, you? 94. So we were in this folk scene together, and I think we did one show together at Johnny D's. It was you, me, and Lori McKenna. Do you remember that? I do. What I remember is that they both brought fans. And I was like, oh, there's a whole group here that loves Lori. And then there were all these like great lesbian women that came to see Pamela. And I was like, I've got nobody in this audience. And I put it together. But then I didn't see you for a long time. And the rumors, I don't know, maybe it was in my head, but I felt like the rumors were swirling in the folk community. I heard Pamela went off. She's becoming a jazz musician. She's off practicing scales in a cave somewhere. And I have to say, I mean, I haven't seen you perform live, and we did our show this morning, but you didn't bring your full-on Jimi Hendrix version, and you, yeah. All right, you've been practicing.
I'll tell you another reason I know anything is because I got tired of being the girl in the room, and bros are like, oh yeah, no, it's in G, it's a 145, and I didn't know what that meant, and it was just too. One time, Peter and I opened for Vance Gilbert at the Somerville Theater. And Vance brought us out for his encore, and we were going to do a funny version of Kumbaya. And I go, what are the chords? What are the chords? Peter, what are the chords? 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 He's like, it's in C, you'll get it. So I'm in front of 600 people faking it. And I was like, this is never, ever going to happen again. So I just went to the books, and now I tell you what key it's in, and when you didn't flatten your third there, brah.
Anyone else? While we're passing that mic, I'll just say it was pretty cool today. Reggie and I go and we play schools, and we talk about race, but we're two straight cis dudes, right? With guitars, which is what kids are used to. So it was pretty cool seeing the girls today looking at Pamela and being like, oh, okay, I can pick that up. So we'll be doing more of it, if I can convince you. Sorry.
Hi there. I actually have a Johnny D's t-shirt on tonight just for the occasion. But Pamela, it's so wonderful to see you perform. I've seen you so many times over the many years, and it's wonderful to see you here. And I loved the range of songs that you shared with us in your set. It made me wonder about like the art of creating a protest song, and like how do you balance the emotion and the passion, the anger, whatever you want to put into the lyrics, and then the music, and how do you work with both things going on so that and you know what I mean? Like just balancing the emotion and what you want people to hear and the song, the melody of it, or whatever it is. Does that make sense? Sure. Cool.
I don't know. There is a sort of mystical phenomenon to the creation of art, something out of nothing. I have read several times and recommend a book called Writing Down the Bones by Natalie Goldberg. And that I read it for the first time years ago, and it changed my writing overnight. And some of the main things that tools that I still use on a regular basis that I learned from that book is to do a timed writing exercise. Basically, the point is to ignore any self-censoring, forget about whose feelings you might hurt, just say the thing, however sloppy or mean or goofy it might be, because you can always go back and edit it later, but the very first output has to just be gross. And, I say that I've written songs in fetal position, and I'm not joking. Like, I'm a slobbering snot, everything. And just usually just playing the guitar, sometimes maybe mumbling some words. Not always. Sometimes I say I write songs in 10 minutes plus a lifetime. The last song I did, Hands Up, I wrote that in the wee hours after the Pulse nightclub massacre in 2016. And I had already been working on a very overt Black Lives Matter song in lyrical content. And it just wasn't grooving yet, it wasn't happening. And that shooting happened, and I was all slobbery in the wee hours, just strumming my guitar. And that song came out pretty much complete in a few minutes. But it didn't. It came out a few minutes in that moment, but it had my whole life experience up until that moment. It had the months that I was trying to write this other song. And I also kind of felt bad because in the first verse, I talk about being queer. And I was like, oh, but I was gonna write a Black Lives Matter song, and now it's all gay and stuff. But that's intersectionality. I am all of these things. And we have to address all of these things all at once to find healing, and we have to push through. And so I own that I wear many hats. And other than that, I really don't know. It's actually, there's the initial output. It's usually sloppy. I can barely read my own penmanship because I'm writing really fast, trying to just get my thoughts out. And then editing comes in. So I think things become finessed and fine-tuned in the editing process, which I did not give legitimacy to for a very long time. Because when I was younger, the first few songs fell out of the sky, and I thought that's how it was supposed to be. But I only had 4 songs. And I thought, well, I guess I need to find a way to embrace the craft of songwriting, and I enjoy that very much. And also, what gave me more confidence in that process is learning that Emily Dickinson, who wrote over 600 poems, never thought a poem was done. She just go, there we go. Yeah. So, always room for improvement.
All right, can we do 2 more questions? Yeah, I see a couple in the middle here. We've been very right side focused, I feel like, for inclusivity and diversity. We should go to the left first, and then we can come to the right.
Hi, so glad to be here. I've spent 40 years in places like this with people who would like to do better, mostly white people, Unitarian Universalists, and we're just so easily distracted by committee meetings and how to keep the building going and how to get more members, and I feel a little of that tonight, and I don't know what to do about it, but I want to name it and say that it's why in Framingham, where I live, after George Floyd was killed, murdered, assassinated, whatever you want to say, a group of people from the UU Church there decided that they were going to, and fill in the blank, many, many endeavors, one of which was to stand in the downtown area with a sign every Friday night. And it becomes difficult. People gradually ebb away and so forth, but I guess I have no conclusion here, just to say that the ennui that privilege brings is painful. The ability to walk away from the protest and once more have a break from race and racism. So I just wanted to get up and say that. And churches are conservative places. I don't mean politically, although many are. But I mean conservative in that, you know, ritual is part of the experience, the weekly experience of the community. And the rituals sometimes get to be kind of stale and privileged, if you will. Arguments about music and whether or not we can have this kind of music or that kind of music. I don't know. I think many people here know exactly what I'm talking about. So I'd love for you to respond to that, because I know that Alistair, you're a Unitarian Universalist, and I happen to have met Reggie, who is a member in the Lexington UU Church, right? Yes?
He lives in upstate New York, but he works
Oh, that's
in
a
all
different,
kinds of
oh, I'm
churches.
thinking of a different Reggie then, okay. All right, so I'd love for you to, both of you, if you would, just talk about that
Sure.
lull engagement. Lull, it's like we need a murder in order to keep going somehow. This is why I'm so grateful for this. Thank you.
Well, I don't think that we need any more murders. And I think that the... I do, but I understand, but I don't think that we need to have another tragedy to get people out in the streets. I mean, maybe, because that seems to be the only way it happens, but the ennui, the privilege, it's tired. There's no more excuses. Like, everybody knows what the fuck is up. You know, those of us who are of color, we are hoarse from saying this shit our whole lives. So, you know, and also to look to us to explain it to you is fucked up. And it's infuriating, and I'm actually not sure that this format is the type of anti-racism work that I want to do. It's 2023. There are so many books. There are so many films. Fucking buy Ava DuVernay the 13th and watch it every day. I have no patience, and you don't have my compassion to say, oh, I'm just so bored, oh, it changes so, you know, it doesn't have to be intense, just put more commit. We all want a better world. It doesn't have to be marching in the streets, it should be, frequently, but you can also read more books, have conversations amongst yourselves. Don't always look to the black people for their reaction to see if it's okay for you to have a particular reaction. It's on you. It's on each of you individually to step up.
I want to make sure that lays there. Go ahead.
I'm not good. I cry a lot. I don't mind it. I've been in therapy for a good long time. I've done a lot of work to sit with my feelings. What I don't like when I cry, especially in this kind of situation, is it presents an opportunity for you to feel bad for me. and to not think about the greater conversation that we're having or the reasons I might be crying. Because when you just feel bad that I'm sad, you've removed yourself from what we're talking about, and now it's just about me. But it's not. I cry because this world is a mess, and it hurts every day. And I appreciate that you asked that question and that you care, and I'm so glad that you're here. And I'm probably gonna cry on the drive home because it is exhausting, and because I don't like having those looks of pity. You know, I'm not here for that. I don't need your pity. I need you to read books. I need you to stand up and speak up when someone says a bad joke or a racist comment. I need you to defend queer and trans children who are being bullied. I need you to get in the ring and stay there. I've been there. I still haven't left. And you know, Club Passim wants to do a similar thing. And they've asked me to sit and have a conversation with my good friend Peter Mulvey. And I said no. I'm not to be on display, even though I feel like it a little bit right now, but there's some asterisks to my knowing you and our conversation and the work that we did this morning. And there's gonna have to be, if we repeat this, you know, I will continue to be pondering what is the best and safest way for me to do this work, because it's probably shortening my lifespan. Most definitely. And to be connected to you, Tanisha, and others like us, they're my vitamins. And you know, when I first started writing political songs, I actually was really bummed. You know, I had read Writing Down the Bones for the first time. I had adopted her methods. And the timed exercise, ignoring your self-censors, is meant to break through into your subconscious, and things come out that you didn't even expect. And the very first tune I wrote was political, and it was really uncomfortable. And I was really bummed because I just wanted to write pop songs and be on the cover of Rolling Stone, and I gotta fucking write this shit. But I wouldn't have it any other way. You know, once that happened to me, there was no going back. There was no way that I could maintain my integrity or look myself in the mirror if I abandoned this path. And it's been at times a lonely path. My phone didn't ring a lot until 2016, and I'm glad to have an opportunity to, I hope, do something that matters and something useful with my time on this planet.
Thanks, Pamela. This is new for us, this kind of space, and I think we're learning something here about the exhaustion. And when you poke at the anger that's here, we have a country that is steeped in stuff that we have inherited and prolonged. So I want to speak to the white folks in the audience. I spent many years saying, what can I do? I don't know how to help. When we moved to this town from a much more diverse city, my wife and I spent several years rubbing our hands saying, it's so white. You know, where are the folks of color? None of that was useful to anybody at all. Reading a book was kind of a start for me. I've been teaching social justice for years, but there's a difference between teaching and doing. The book Waking Up White by Debbie Irving, who grew up in Winchester next door, was a book for me, written by a white person about understanding her place in race. One of the things that stuck with me in that book was that if you live in a very white community, the opportunity to do anti-racism work is elevated, not diminished. This is where this work needs to happen. Malden doesn't need this conversation the way we need it. And the standing out with signs can be powerful, but I know for me, when all of my focus was on national stuff, that's where I burned out, because you feel like, what do I do with this country? But when you can put your focus into stuff that's happening in your backyard, you can feel change happening underneath. But I think the biggest change that has happened for me is coming to the conclusion that this is self-care for me. We think about racism as something that's happening to other people, but it's happening to us. It eats us up inside. It's toxic. It hurts. And when we don't deal with it, we are carrying all of that weight inside of us as white people. So this is selfish work for me, and not this. The real work for me is the work that I do with Manjula here, and the other folks who are involved in our racial justice community coalition here in Melrose. It's been a learning curve for me over the last 2 years, never being involved in town politics, to get into really the nitty-gritty and learning way more, frankly, than I wanted to learn about this particular town. But this now is my town, and I want to see change happen here. And we can push and make things happen here, and we can feel that change underneath our fingers and see the things move. And it takes commitment, and it takes not having excuses. And what I've learned is it takes writing up the damn meeting notes and writing the agendas, the last thing I wanted to do. But you can do it. And you can make that time in your life, create the time, put it in, and it starts to become self-care. And the time that I spend with that group talking about things in this town is frustrating and slow, and we're constantly frustrated by the pace of change in our schools and in our city government. But I leave every one of those meetings feeling better because we're in it together. So I encourage you guys to join us or find your own thing. Find your own thing. You know, there's something in this town or nearby that meets an intersection of what you're good at and what you're interested in. And those are the places where you can make a difference. And I'm glad you came tonight because as hard as it is, we all, I think, are leaving with something that we can remember. And Pamela gave us a gift by being willing to go to that place as hard as it was. So thank you, my friend, and I'm sorry to put you in a difficult position, but I'm so glad you came.
I don't enjoy the difficult position, but I don't not like it. Like I appreciate that I'm doing something. You know, I want to be like Angela Davis when I grow up, and I want to, you know, speak eloquently and put people in their place and explain the breakdown of all the situations. And I've still got a way to go, and it is at times quite painful, but I accepted this role, and I wouldn't be able to accept myself if I abandoned this work, especially at this point. And so I'm glad to find welcoming spaces, and however, even if it's a rainbow flag out front or a Black Lives Matter sign in the yard. This conversation is, on the more intense side, but it's what we need, I'm gonna mess up the quote, but James Baldwin said, "Nothing can be faced unless it's." No, nothing can be. See, I messed it up. Nothing can be changed unless it's faced. You know what I'm talking about. And so we're facing it.